Okay, so we're out here in central Montana on the east side of the Crazy Mountains, looking out onto the plains. We're looking to the east, and I really enjoy this scene. It's a very simple plain scene, but I want to see if we can make it interesting. Plus, I want to capture some of these subtle colors that I'm seeing out there. My name is Jason Tako, and thank you for watching. I'm going to be taking you through this painting. For those of you who are just watching on YouTube, on the public channel, you'll be able to see some of this painting completed. If you want to see the entire thing, that's reserved for my Patreon supporters. Become a Patreon supporter, click on the link below. And if you could do me a favor in the meantime as well and like this video, give it a thumbs up. Leave your comments, questions below. I'll do my best to answer them. It's very windy out here, so this is going to be a bit of a challenge. But I think we can pull it through. So I'm going to take a block-in approach first. Usually I start with my darkest darks, but I'm going to do a very thin wash of the basic colors that I see going on here. And my intention is to capture, and your intentions are one of the most important things you can do, figure out when you are going to paint. You know, what is it about the scene that you like? And my intention is to capture just this incredible aerial perspective that you don't get in a lot of other parts of the country, or at least in some parts of the country. I can see very far here, farther than I can in most other areas I've been in. And that's something a little bit different than what I normally experience. So that's what I want to capture. I'm going to show more of the ground than the sky, and my horizon line up a little bit, because the sky, I can see the sky anywhere. I mean, it is big sky country out here. There's a lot to be said for that. But I want to get these greens receding into the distance. I know my sky tone is too dark, but I'll fix that up. Make a mental note of that. By the way, the colors on my palette: titanium white, nickel yellow, cadmium yellow light, cadmium orange, yellow ochre, transparent red oxide, cadmium red, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, viridian, and chromium green oxide. The white that I'm using is actually, these are all oil paints. The white is actually alkyd, which is just a quick drying oil paint, which I like to use when I'm traveling, because I want my paintings to dry a bit faster for ease of transportation, storage, and all that stuff. Alright, so just laying in approximates. As I said, aerial perspective is my main objective here. So we got something of a butte there. And if you know the principles of aerial perspective, you can then implement them. Something that I teach to my students in my live online painting classes, which is a little different than even my Patreon. My Patreon is just, you get to watch the full-length videos for $5 a month. I usually put a couple videos up a month. I also teach live online classes, so anyone in the world can join. And we go really in depth on all the concepts. I can't explain everything out here like I can in my classes because there just isn't the time. So link below is on that as well. All right, so I'm going to keep squinting at the scene and mixing my colors to get that ever so necessary aerial perspective, at least implied here. And we do have a sense of classical perspective going on as well. I'm going to try to show that if I can. I'm painting on oil prime linen that's been taped down onto a piece of masonite, just with masking tape. I get a lot of questions, what are you painting on? What is that? It's just, I buy rolls of oil prime linen, tape it down. That's why I like the quick drying white paint, because I only have so many of these panels that I bring with me, and I can, when this painting dries, just untape it. A lot easier to store. If you're buying expensive canvas panels for just your plein air sketches, it costs a lot more money. It's a lot more to store too. So let's rub this with a paper towel. It's not too bad. Like I said, the sky, it's too dark, but I know that right now, so I'm not going to freak out about it. I'll go back in and key that in a little bit later. All right, so the darkest darks in here are the trees. Those trees are going to play a very important part for getting the rest of these values established. I'm going to take Viridian and transparent red oxide. I'm even going to put a touch of white in there because I don't want it to be a full strength black or dark. But this is going to be the darkest part of my painting, which follows, of course, John F. Carlson's principles on angles and consequent values, which that if you can if you can master aerial perspective and angles and consequent values, you pretty much mastered landscape painting. Of course, you got to get your technique with your medium down and all that too. That's the easier part. A lot of novice artists think that it's all about special colors and techniques and some magical technique or something, and that's really not it. It's really about mastering how light behaves, how color and value behave. Once you get that down, you can put the paint down with a shovel if you like, and probably still come up with something pretty worthwhile. Okay, so the uprights have got to be the darkest thing in the painting most of the time. The uprights being the trees and things like that. Throw a little alizarin in there. Not going to paint the trees exactly how they are. Not too worried about that. Just get a general shape. It's going to be more interesting anyway if you sit there and try to paint every single little branch exactly how it is. It usually doesn't look as good in the end. It looks overworked, stiff, and amateurish in most cases. There's some realist painters out there who do a really good job with that, but they're not out here doing it in plein air. I can guarantee you that. They might do plein air studies, but they're not doing those super high detail paintings in plein air. With a couple exceptions, I know a couple artists who do that, but they're out there for multiple days, usually going back to the same scene, and they have to wait for the weather to be the same, for the lighting to be the same and all that. I do not live out here in Montana. I wish I did, but I don't, so I have to be a bit more economical with my time. All right, so I see some more intense greens right in here. I have my darkest darks established. I'm not going to bother much with the highlights on those trees because there barely are any. We're dealing with mostly backlighting here. And if you've watched some of my other videos, you'll notice that I kind of have a thing for backlighting. I think it looks better, and honestly, it's a little easier to paint. The other day I was up in the Beartooth Mountains painting, and that was kind of a disaster because the roads were closed out part of the way in. So I decided to do this. I do this almost every year I come out west. I decide to paint a mountain from the front lighting, and if you notice, a lot of the great mountain painters do not paint the mountains from the front. They paint it side lit or backlit, and they tend to look better that way, at least in my opinion they do, and they're easier to paint. The front of a mountain, when it's almost completely frontlit, it's just miserable. There's so many little tones and things going on in there. But anyway, back to the trees. Backlit mostly. There's a little bit of highlight in there, not much. This is basically a classic kind of steelyard composition. Edgar Payne talks about that in his Composition of Outdoor Painting book, which is a must-have for the serious landscape artist. That and John F. Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting. All right, this shrub does have some lighting on it. We're going to get in there right away. It's a little more yellow on the top. As we come down on the side of the bush, it gets a bit more green, but it's not a super yellow green. It's got quite a bit of white in it. One little secret about painting greens is that you need to tone them down, and I've noticed, at least, or especially in scenes like this, that you need quite a bit of, sometimes you need to add quite a bit of white into your green mixture also. A little darker richer green right in here. I'm in open pasture country, so I'm hoping that some cows don't decide to come and attack me or something. Technically on ranch land. Hopefully a rancher doesn't come to shoot me either. They're pretty nice out here. Okay, let's get a little more red in. Let's get that tone out there. That's a bit too warm. Let's cool that. Let's try white to cool it a bit. I think we're a bit too warm and a bit too light in value, or dark in value. What amazes me is the longer I paint, the more neutral I realize everything is out in nature. You tend to, when you start out painting, you know, you use all these local color names in your head. You know, like that's green, that's blue. But the longer you paint, the more you realize that nature doesn't conform to that kind of thinking. All right, back in here, there's a row of trees that are more distant. Pretty cool in color, but still fairly neutral too. There's some cows in the distance losing their minds. Hopefully they're not going to come over here and lose their minds. It's a pretty good approximate. I might have to adjust this later, at least in certain spots. Okay, then we go further back. And we get quite a bit lighter in value and cooler as well. That's a little too light. So let's go back in with some ultramarine alizarin. Touch of ochre to slightly neutralize it. Actually, let's try some cobalt. That might have got too warm. Cool it down with just a bit of cobalt and white. Okay, I think next I want to get that sky blocked in. So I'm going to take this to my Patreon supporters. Thanks for watching up to this point. If you want to continue watching this, become a Patreon supporter, click on the link below. I also teach live online painting classes. I do have sample videos of those on my channel, so go check those out. There's information there on how to sign up if you'd like to study under me. Some of the best teaching you're going to get, especially live and online. We paint together as a group. Anyway, give me a thumbs up and leave a comment, question below, and we'll see you again. Thanks for watching.